What is the result? Elon Musk and Donald Trump are revisiting and rewriting the history of South Africa. Donald Trump has now extended an invitation to the Afrikaans, a name for us Gen X's and baby boomers and silent generation, if you're still around, that would instill fear, that would instill anger, that would instill a rejection, but now is a celebrated thing. He has extended now an arm, an invitation to them. For what purpose? As refugees if they need to, because South Africans whose land was taken from them under this wicked apartheid system are now being told by the United States president that they are doing something wrong.
Trying to negotiate and ask for a particular sum. And this is what he said. Our last legislative link with, this was July 16, as I said, 1962. Mm-hmm. Our last legislative link with Jamaica will be broken today. An association which has gone back almost 400 years. Mm-hmm. We in the United Kingdom owe a great debt, not only to Jamaica, but to the other territories in the West Indies and the Caribbean. I was much distressed recently when so much attention, both in the British press and in British public life, was paid to what we are supposed to be giving to some of these people who come over from Jamaica without any regard for the tremendous contribution themselves have made to our economy over hundreds of years. They have produced great wealth for us in the West Indies and the Caribbean and have given us a highly important strategic position for our fleet. And he went on to say that what Bustamante was negotiating, and the sum that all the others from the Caribbean were negotiating should be paid. Because, and so here is our proof.
And what year are we looking at there?
And that is what we must use in our negotiation to say, you yourself admitted, your parliamentarians admitted that reparations should be paid. You know, so I'm saying it should be part of the negotiating strategy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, so this is a conversation that's been going on for so many years, Professor.
Yes.
Clifford, and yet here we are. And this is why when you came on, I said, this is interesting times. These are interesting times, aren't they? To, you know, to use the Chinese term. But really and truly, we have an opportunity to do so much here that, it befuddles the mind, really, that we seem to be playing some kind of political football with this. I really do hope that we get pretty serious about it. And I hope that the people at well, are you still a part of the NCR?
The National Council. Yes, I'm a member, and I do my part by doing what I'm doing, by historicizing everything so that we can understand what we need to say as part of the moral obligation.
Yes.
It's not only, it's a moral obligation, you know, because remember, as I said, the royalty was mixed up in the trafficking and the enslavement of people, meaning financing and benefiting from it. Remember, it was a state-sponsored capitalist venture, you know?
Yes.
And Britain, in fact, I think, Portugal was the main trafficker, and I think between 1501 and 1875, Britain accounted for about 26% of those forcefully taken to the region. And I read you the list of monarchs who invested in the enterprise, starting with Queen Elizabeth I, you know? And they financed raiding missions to Africa. They sponsored ships like the Jesus of Lubeck, you know, which transported like 359 Africans to the Americas. And you had, under the Stuart monarchy, a rapid expansion of the trade, the trafficking in Africans. And so they all benefited. I mean,
what's your thinking generally, Professor Shepherd, on? All right, so here I know we've heard the minister say, and we'll hear more from her when she comes in, that this has been done in phases. Are you optimistic that that after one phase is complete, and we're still, well, right now there's so much up in the air with the first phase in terms of the contentious issues, but that we will go to a second phase? Are you optimistic that that will happen, knowing our history?
If I don't remain optimistic, I'm going to sink into depression. I don't want to do that. Yeah. I hope I see this before I die, because the evidence is there, Cabo. Is not only the disrespectful relationship, in my view. And I don't want people telling me, look how much money in grants and aid Britain gives. That is not reparation, right?
Well,
grants and aid is not reparation.
That, because we see where grants and aids are fickle business. Look at this whole US aid thing.
Exactly.
I've always spoken out against US aid on
exactly. If we rely on that, and then there's change in political philosophy and relationships and leaders, then look at that. But let me just end this part, because it's really, I think it's critical. Because I'm talking about state-sponsored backing for the Royal African Company.
Yes.
The Royal African Company had the backing and the blessing of the British royalty. The company's governor or chief operating officer at one time was the Duke of York, later King James II. And leading royals such as Charles II, James II, William III were major shareholders and profiteers. In 1690, William III bought 1,000 worth of RAC stock from Edward Colston, the one that the statue they put in the water in Liverpool, right? Oh, yeah. He was then deputy governor of the Royal African Company. And so, royal backing and the sheer volume of Africans traded were also factors that determined the value, not just of the Royal African Company shares, but the South Sea Company and the group of royal people trafficking, the Royal Company of Royal Adventurers trafficking to Africa. So as Ahmed Reid argues, despite this overwhelming evidence, the historiography has relegated European monarchs' involvement in this dastardly business to the footnotes of history. We are trying to resurrect that history and say this part must go along in your demand. In your demand, you put the constitutional issues, you look at what the change will require, but you also say you have benefited from Jamaica for centuries. You see, 400 years, people always use that. You have a moral obligation to ensure, and I want the government to negotiate, because we don't want to de-link and we have nothing. It's not only about, it is a lot about self-respect. But self-respect alone can run the country.
Because I hear you saying that, and as you use the term de-link, that we could go into being a republic, we could get rid of the monarchy as head of state, but at the same time we would de-link in such a way that we have not held them accountable for the atrocities.
This is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying, and and I think a lot of people are arguing that, because you can't just say, all right, I just want republicanism, but what are you going to use to manage your country after that? Remember, the same argument was at independence. It's the exact same argument that Bustamante and the team, that's what they were making. They were saying, we want independence, but we want you to ensure that based on the history, based on your obligation, you invest a certain amount of money in Jamaica. If people go and read Hilary Betters's British Black Debt, everything is in there.
Yeah.
Because they use new information from the Hansard parliamentary papers, new documents that are released every year, to show. And that Creech Jones quote is coming from Beckles' work. So the evidence is there.
And
I don't know if there's a historian on the Constitutional Commission. I'm certainly not there. So, but I hope they have a historian on that commission to advise them.
Let us pause a minute. But you have no idea?
I don't know.
Do we not know at all if there's a historian on the CRC?
I don't know. Maybe we should go look. But I've not heard any of my colleagues saying that they're there.
On the CRC? Check for me, please. Let us get
maybe there's a historian. I'm saying I'm hoping that there's a historian there.
Right. But why are you not there? And I know you don't want me to answer that question, but since we're drinking coffee and
I can't put myself.
You can't put Let us take a break. I have to laugh. Let's take a quick break. I'll be right back. This is crazy. I don't know where I am, but we're all over. We're also on irfm.net. We're on our mobile app. You can listen to IRFM for free. All you have to do, go to the Google Play Store, download the app, and then voila, you will be able to hear us for free anywhere in the world. You don't have to pay anything. In the meantime, though, we're streaming live. So if you're on Facebook, you'll be able to see us. And it's IRFM, Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc. Wherever IRFM is, just type in IRFM and you'll see us streaming. We are there this morning. Peter Brodber is doing an excellent job. Our engineer, I'll almost call you Duval there. Wilbert Wisdom is also in the studio, sitting right in front of me to ensure that we're doing everything right this morning. So good morning, Mr. Wisdom. On the phone lines, Professor Vereen Shepherd. All right, so we just heard from Minister Malahoo Fort, who has assured us that she'll be here by 7:30. So it is 21 after 7 now, Professor Shepherd. So we hopefully she'll be in the studio with us in 9 minutes.
Excellent. That's excellent.
Yes, it is. And so Prof, we talked about, who the CRC, the Constitutional Reform Committee. So Shamara just given me a list. Ambassador Rocky Mead, Dr. Derek McCoy, Senator the Honorable Tom Tavares Finson, and Senator Ransford Braham. That's a person who I heard saying that if we are not careful, we'll be paying homage to King George. Senator Donna Scott Motley, Mr. Anthony Hilton, Professor Richard Albert, Dr. the Honorable Lloyd Barnett, Mr. Hugh Small, and Dr. David Henry, Dr. Nadine Spence, and Mrs. Lalita Davis Mattis, and Mr. Sujay Boswell. Did you recognize any historian in that list, Prof? Because you would know.
No, I did look at the list actually some time ago when it was established. I hadn't looked at it recently. And I was being cautious because I didn't know whether there are new additions or anything like that. But I see some really good lawyers on the CRC. So, but I'm not recognizing any established historians. There are people who know history, but I'm not recognizing any UWI, Mona, or Caville, or any Jamaican historian or other historians. Say from the Mona History Department on it. No, I didn't recognize any, but I did see the list before. Yeah. But I don't know. I was thinking maybe there have been additions since I last looked at it or something. Yeah,
and just generally speaking, outside, and I don't know if you can divorce yourself from being a historian, but we said earlier how important this was, that this is not something that we can play around with. This is a very serious time in our history. We're making a decision for the rest of our lives, in terms of this reform process. How important is it to have a historian in this space, considering our particular situation of slavery, enslavement, and how that is tied up into any conversation on Republican?
Yes, Republican. But I mean, even if a historian is not there, I'm sure we are on standby to be consulted on anything that is important. I know Mrs. Lalita Davis Mattis talk to her a lot. She's the chair of the National Council on Reparations. She knows that she has us as members of the council to advise on anything, any information she might need. So that is established, and the history department is there, and so on. So at any moment they need us, we're on standby. But Kabu, that history is not a compulsory subject in our system anywhere, and that the knowledge of history and the importance of history, I don't think is appreciated by many people. And when something historical is in the media, like a bullet point along the way, then we are called for interviews. But we're not investing in the education of our children in such a way that they will understand and know their history. And that concerns me. I'm concerned about the lack of knowledge of our history. I went on one website. I'm really sorry to call out Jess, but when I went on the website and I looked at the history of Jamaica that they have there, can I just say it needs to be decolonized, and decolonial language needs to be used. It needs reform. And I'm volunteering to do it over.
Volunteering. Well, GIS, did you hear that? Professor Shepherd is volunteering to edit. I'm just going to put it in journalistic terms. The your website, especially that part on the history of Jamaica.
History of Jamaica. Yes,
right.
yes.
I know they're listening.
And I'm concerned about the children. But if the children want to understand the constitutional changes, the history of Jamaica, and in terms of the constitutional history or relationship with the monarchy and the various kings and queens and them from England, stroke the United Kingdom. I don't know if you can see this.
Right.
It's called Caribbean Free. It's called Freedoms One.
Okay.
I don't have Caribbean Freedom.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Right. Freedoms One.
Yes.
Yeah, we're seeing it clearly.
The subtitle is Caribbean Emancipations, Ethnicities and Nationhood. It's written for schools. It's written by Professor Hilary Beckles and myself, right?
Yes.
Two of us wrote this for the children.
Right.
The companion to this is called Liberties Lost. So there's Liberties Lost, which is volume 1, and Freedoms 1, volume 2.
Yeah.
And chapter 17 of this book explains the political history of the region, including Jamaica. The change from the monarchical system, meaning that the crown colony, through the old representative system, the return of self-government, all of that is in here. And then I mentioned Hilary Beckles' Britain's Black Death.
Right.
This is fundamental reading for anyone. It might be too advanced for the students, maybe sixth formers. If any sixth formers doing history.
And fifth formers too, yeah.
This is fundamental to trace the well, you can see the cover. It's one of the royal people on the cover. And juxtaposed with the trafficking, Professor Beckles chose this cover brilliantly to show the juxtaposition, of the trafficking and the couple with the richness of others. Right. Now, so this explains the relationship with the UK and the responsibility, the debt owed by the UK, and in terms of reparations. Yes. And then, the Center, just before I left, the Center for Reparation Research, we put this out, 20 questions and answers on reparations. Simple questions and, as simple as possible, the answers. And in there, you will find also the quotes that I read from Preach Jones and Lord Ogburn, and how the negotiating strategy is developing and so on. So 20 questions and answers on reparations. The Center for Reparation Research at the University of the West Indies has copies. So they can get in touch with the center and get copies. Because we're trying to get everyone at every level to understand what we're talking about. Yes. But I insist that must be part of the negotiation. And as I said, Minister Grange does consult the National Council on Reparations also if she wants information. So we are here to advise.
You know, I remember we are both St. Mary High is our alma mater, both of us.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in about fifth form.
And we both come from Hopewell.
And we both come from Hopewell. Very near to each other, actually. Just across the river from each other. But,
yes. But my part was called Africa.
Listen, man, Africa was in my district. Don't let us argue about Africa today.
You were
I keep telling you that Africa.
Part of yours was Africa?
Not part of mine, but Africa was just down the road from me.
You're down the road, yes. I would never know it. Look at that. But you're young,
good
so
morning to the people
you would have known.
You just down the road from me, man. And so, but I remember in fifth form, and this, I'm trying to gauge, and you're showing us those books now, and you've said that history isn't even compulsory. And one of the things that I've noticed is that I'm trying to engage young people in this conversation on constitutional reform and the journey to republic. But my personal experience is that there is a disconnect, and it is shocking to me, right? And I suppose there are a lot of reasons for this. But I was saying at St. Mary High, I remember Jeffrey Mordecai, that was his name, and Joan Williams had come to St. Mary High, and they had the Constitution, packaged, like many copies of those. And, they gave them out, and later on there were many of us who joined with them. And, I was walking from Highgate to Richmond, handing out the Constitution and knocking on people's door, knocking at them windows, knocking at them gates and saying, here's a copy of the Constitution. And so, and in Hopewell and Fraser Wood and all those areas we were handing out the copies of the Constitution. So I'm saying to myself, but I was a student. I wasn't more than 16 at the time. And we were engaged, and it wasn't just me. A lot of students were doing that. Now there's a conversation on the island about constitutional reform, about a journey to republic. But our students, our young people seem so disengaged from this. And it's bothersome. It's worrying to me that whether you reach 18 or not, that this is something that is going to affect you for the rest of your life. So whose responsibility is it?
Well, the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education, I think, since we're talking about schools, and maybe some of the schools do have the Constitution. I don't know. I remember when I was teaching history at Merle Grove, we did, a colleague of mine, I remember, had the Constitution giving out to some of the students. And even later on, while I was at UA, many students were being given the Constitution. We were looking at the Constitution. So I don't know what is happening right now, to be honest, in the schools. What I do know is that there's social studies, and social studies should include that kind of education on the way the country runs. That's the role of social studies. But I'm still saying social studies cannot replace history education. And even the Patterson report calls on the government to make history a compulsory subject in the schools. I don't know how many recommendations have been implemented, but if we continue to think that STEM is more important than STEAM, if we give that impression, then we're not going to get anywhere with our history. You see, the thing is, you don't have to specialize in history or become a historian after you leave school. I'm saying it should be a foundation subject so that you don't get lost along the way if you don't know your history. We all we big up Marcus Garvey and talk about him, but yet we're not introducing the principles and his views on history and the past and so on. So I'm thinking that we need to do that. We need to ensure that history becomes compulsory, because all these arguments, about what is happening in the schools, how people can't wear locks and children are being, policed by the hair police and the dress-led police. I mean, when I was going to St. Mary's School, I don't know In your time, you were wearing
You all got
gowns?
you
You were
all
wearing
got to wear-
gowns?
You all got to wear miniskirts and so on. No, we weren't wearing. It was right on our knees or just above our
We were
knees.
wearing miniskirt, even as teachers. I'm
Yes.
going to send you a photo of the teachers
Yes.
at St. Mary's School. There was a group photo. And there were miniskirts.
I know. I've seen that.
And nothing happened to anybody. I mean, it was, this, and as students, it was right at the knee.
Yes.
You didn't have the long gowns that I
we were
see
at the
at
knee
some
too.
schools.
Yes, we were. And even now, I was just by St. Mary High on the.
Have they changed the gowns?
No, they're still,
Okay. Good.
And I'm happy for that. That we're not policing, them to the extent that I see.
What about the hairstyle?
Well, I'm not sure about the hairstyle at St. Mary High, but
I must check.
I did see.
Because
quite
I
a
will
few
call them out if they're not, if they're
Right.
oppressing the children. I was driving along somewhere in Crossroads recently, and I saw some girls. I don't know which school it is, and this girl had locks, and I was like, I wanted to stop and talk to her, but it was too much. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I was saying, really, there's a school in Kingston where the children can go with their natural hairstyle and with their locks, and I want to know what this. I'm going to investigate.
And
It was up there on blue with yellow trim. I don't know which school that is.
okay.
But I have to do some investigation and pick up that school.
Up to that school.
And now, because I have friends who are wondering, where do I send my child? I don't want my child to grow up in an atmosphere of fear about what the hairstyle should be, what the dress length should be. And I'm telling you, if the intention, well, I don't know what the intention is. I suspect the intention, so I won't say. But if the intention is what I think it is, it's not working. Because look at the society.
In terms of what?
Look at the society. Look at the society.
Yeah.
Look at the crime. Look at the lack of respect. Look at the lack of values. So you think long skirt is going to correct that?
Oh no, because no.
They can't even run if there's fire and flood.
But that takes us to, and finally, Professor Shepherd, thank you for staying on too. I really appreciate it. There's this thing. Well, I heard Minister Malahoo Ford in addressing one of his sessions throughout this process, talking about phase 2, where the focus will be on rights and so on. So
Yes.
I suppose some of these conversations we're having would be in the phase 2.
Good.
If phase 2 happens, and that I think, but I think, how do we ensure? And I suppose that is for the minister when she comes in. But
Yes.
it is imperative, I think, for once we have agreed that phase 1, phase 2, and if there's a third phase, that there's a time frame between phase
Yes.
1 and phase 2 that we go into that, within that time frame. How important is that? So
the thing is though, based on our timeline for the Republic transition, we may have to do things simultaneously. You know what I mean? That because you do have many people who can help. In other words, the teachers can be, there can be education for the teachers. But again, if they themselves don't know history and so on, or the context within which we exist,
yes,
and how we came to be, if they don't know that history, then I'm not sure what kind of values they're passing on to the children. So maybe a dedicated education in the schools about the process will have to, that should go on.
Because
if it is not going on already.
And the students can impact. I think there's some work that is being done. I'm not saying that I haven't seen that, but our own experience here is a disengagement. I'm talking to a lot of students. It is, for me, we talk about apathy in voting. They're not clocked into this. Yes, they're not locked into this.
When I speak to young people, when I do have the opportunity, many of them, after leaving sixth form, if they do sixth form, but they have left school, they're 18 and over now, they're not registered voters. And when I ask them, do you know what it took for us to get the vote? Because there was a time when we couldn't vote universal adult suffrage came later on.
Yeah.
And don't you think you have a responsibility? They said they don't know what's the use of that. Because their life continues. They don't see, why they should vote for one party or the other.
And do you have to be a registered voter
that's the kind of apathy that I have noticed among some young people.
In terms of, I'll ask the minister, but as you said that, I'm thinking, but for the referendum, you're going to have to be registered to vote on this, do you? Or you just go to a place and vote on this referendum? How does it work?
You have me there. I will listen to your interview.
Yes. That's
because the referendum for this to come out of the
monarchy.
Of the federation. People were registered voters, but again, the apathy was still there. So you have to make people understand why they should vote.
Yeah.
Whether they have whether they have registered voters or not. Encourage them to be registered, but let them understand why it is important.
Yeah.
And part of that education is what we went through as a people, and how responsible and how lucky we are, to have come out of that oppressive era and then be here as independent people. Yeah. What is our responsibility as a citizen? I think social studies has to teach them that in the schools, and then we have to reinforce that in the public space.
Professor Vereen Shepherd, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an intervention, and I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
Light on this, contextualizing this, helping us to understand what it is that we're really talking about, our moral obligation, and how important this that is coming up, how important this is for us. We cannot play with this. We're going to have to do this. Let us please agree with this. And as you have been saying, Professor Shepherd, we cannot tribalize it.
No, it should not be. Should not be. And we should encourage our people to get registered if they have to register to vote in the referendum. But I think they have to. Yeah.
Well, and please go register for vote.
Let people go there and vote for their future and the future of their children and grandchildren.
This is too important.
It's that important.
This is too important to play with.
It's very important, because as you say, you quoted someone who said, then, William's children will be ruling Jamaica if they're not careful.
I cannot stomach that.
No,
I cannot stomach that.
Well, I know I won't be here. So
where would you be?
On their road.
Listen, but I won't have a King William either. Excuse me from that.
Yes.
So we are going to have to do this.
Yes.
By any means necessary.
But
this is where I stand
the present monarchs, the members of the royal family, they don't even believe in reparatory justice. So
goodness.
That is why I'm saying that you have to have a strong lobby for that as part of the demand. And I hope it's not the phases that you were talking about, but that we ensure that we have the demand is intertwined, with the political and constitutional demand. Okay,
Professor Vereen Shepherd.
All right.
Thank you so much, my sister. As always, this was fun and
thank you for having me.
Me and you on Zoom. Professor Vereen Shepherd, there, historian extraordinaire. You know her. No introduction needed. But we both agree on almost everything. I don't know anything that we disagree on.
I learned from you. I'm a teacher on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, please. Thank you so much.
But thank you, and I listen with interest to the minister.
Yes, me too.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
And just to say quickly before we go to the break, that one of the things we're going to do this morning is to open the phone lines for our listeners to call in, for you to call in and ask questions of the minister. Please write down your questions from now. Write them down. Make sure, you have your thoughts fully thought out. Write them down. Write down the question. I don't mind if when you're talking to Minister Malahoo Fort, you're reading your questions, but write them down. This is IRFM Town Hall. We'll take a break. All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. Thank you so much for joining us on the 107s, 107.1 all the way to 107.9 on the internet at irefm.net. Thank you so much for joining us across all of our social media platforms. We welcome you to the space and to the program. We're talking about the journey to republic. We're talking about constitutional reform in Jamaica. This is a very serious question that we're posing for ourselves here in Jamaica. For myself, I think it is too serious to fool around with, to play around with. I think it is too serious for us to treat it lightly. If it is, and we'll have a discussion with Minister Malahoo Fort when she comes in. By the way, we know we said she would be here by 7. We can tell you that her team is already here and she is pretty close. So she'll be in the studio as soon as she gets here. Thank you so much, Professor Vereen Shepherd, because we cannot have a discussion about becoming a republic that is tied closely to sovereignty. It is closely tied to independence. It is closely tied to full free. So we cannot have this conversation without rooting this and foregrounding this and foundationing this in the historical context and our moral obligation to be part of the process. Now, I know I'm speaking to the IRFM's audience and the wider audience that has joined us this morning to say it is moving, things are happening, we're hearing the objections, we're hearing the contentious issues, and too many of us have distanced ourselves and disassociated ourselves from the process. My advice is for us to get involved. And I don't mean just asking public questions, but first of all, asking ourselves questions. Because there's a lot that we have over the years spoken out against. And if you recall, at the beginning of this year, every year we have a theme in this program that takes us through the year. And what we said was our theme for this year is we are on our own, reshaping the future of Africa and the Caribbean for our children. We have to think along those lines. The bottom line is that we are indeed on our own. And when I say on our own, I mean as African people, continental African diasporic people, wherever we are in the Caribbean, wherever we are on the continent of Africa, wherever we are in the world. It is time for unity. We see what's coming out of South Africa and the executive order that was signed by the President Donald Trump, South Africa. South Africa has failed itself, and South Africa continues to fail itself. And I know my brothers and sisters are listening from South Africa this morning, but we have to call a spade, and we're not from St. Elizabeth. But here is the bottom line. If we forget our history, we are bound to repeat it and we are bound to experience the very same thing over and over again. South Africa has taken out of its recent memory the tragedy and the atrocity of apartheid, so that too many young South Africans, millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Alphas, do not know what that whole period was about and the importance of observing the freedom from that period, even though we know that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for example, was a sellout of the people of South Africa. But South Africa is wiping apartheid clean from its memory. What is the result? Elon Musk and Donald Trump are revisiting and rewriting the history of South Africa. Donald Trump has now extended an invitation to the Afrikaans, a name for us Gen X's and baby boomers and silent generation, if you're still around, that would instill fear, that would instill anger, that would instill a rejection, but now is a celebrated thing. He has extended now an arm, an invitation to them. For what purpose? As refugees if they need to, because South Africans whose land was taken from them under this wicked apartheid system are now being told by the United States president that they are doing something wrong. I know that Cyril Ramaphosa has already responded, and I hear what he has said. I know there's a parliamentary meeting in South Africa on Monday. We'll see what comes out of that. But the ANC has also failed, because now the ANC is so deep with the day that it is the apartheid party, the people who enslaved you and trafficked your spouses into mines and so on. You have wiped that memory. What, are you ashamed of that memory? And so what South Africa has done has resulted in the executive order signed by Donald Trump. 9/11. Every single anniversary of 9/11, the United States of America sets up a podium in the Capitol or some other place, and for an entire day, since 9/11, have the people come in and read the names and call the names and speak again the stories of those who died in 9/11. That is what we need to do when it comes to our history. The rituals are important. The Europeans recognize how important rituals are, because rituals help to keep memories alive. And if we forget, we are bound to be enslaved again. What have we forgotten in Jamaica? Why is the history important? And this is why I talk about the need for the historian to be in place. Because understanding where we're coming from, understanding what the British monarchy means to us, that understanding, that memory is important. We have a moral obligation to remember that and then to say no more. But too many of us have forgotten, and too many of us are unwilling to engage. We talk about the funding industrial complex and the extent to which the funding industrial complex has manifested itself in a kind of a artificial apathy on this island. That everyone who is getting funding, regardless of where you are, you will speak and you will join the activism of a struggle for liberation only to a point. But if it touches on those who are funding you, then this is where you either sabotage a process or you walk away, and we find ourselves left on our own. I hear a lot of people talking about the USAID. We always knew that USAID did not mean aid. Aid comes with a bomb. That's what Jean Binter-Breeze told us. And DJ Unstoppable, I think you can find that song, you know. Jean Binter-Breeze, AIDS come with a bomb. It's on YouTube. I'd like to give a listen to that. Jean Binter-Breeze, our late and dear sister, knew that, wrote about that as a poet. This is a job of the poet. This is a job of art. This is a job of our activists. So we knew from day one, and we have been telling you, that part of our problem on this island is funding. But what the onslaught on USAID by the current administration in the US is telling us is that we are on our own. And we have always been on our own, but for licky and greedy and nyam-nuff. Pardon my language. But we have always been on our own. So the point of the matter is that even while we looked as if we weren't on our own because we were funded we were even more on our own because the funding was creating division and was acting as potholes and craters in the path of the liberation struggle on this island. I have no problem with the funding be yanked altogether. I want to see all of them, EU, UK, you name it. And then for us to be self-sufficient, return now to the teachings of Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Self-determination, self-sufficiency, food security, water security, looking within ourselves. Everybody is looking within themselves. What America is doing right now is looking within itself, you know. It might be the last-ditch effort for supremacy in terms of the empire. But at the end of the day, it is an inward look. And this is what we need to do. Look within ourselves and then to make the decision where we go from here. How do we envision? What does independence look like? What does full freedom look like? This is what we need to ask ourselves. But we need to get every one of us involved in this process. Now, I would like to see many things, many other stuff happening with the Constitution. This is not necessarily what I want. But we are at a point where we're getting rid of the monarchy. I'm not playing with it. Any means necessary. We must get rid of the monarchy as head of state of Jamaica. And I write this on me there. Let's take a break. We must decolonize ourselves. We must decolonize our minds. We must stand up to the beast. Self-determination, self-reliance, re-evaluating our path forward. I write this on me there. Minister, welcome. Thank you so much. We have Minister Malahoo Ford. I'm just giving her a minute to get herself all together inside of our town hall, the IRFM town hall. Welcome. Good to meet you. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. You see, Minister not feeling so well, but she's here, and we are very happy for that. So we don't want to catch what Minister having. But anyway, thank you so much for coming in, Minister Malahoo Ford. The journey to republicanism, the journey, the constitutional reform process. This is what we're focusing. I just love the T-shirt. You know, Irie, just look at that. You come prepared. Listen, man, she's well prepared. Irie, we love it. We love it. So we've been talking about this. One of the things that we did and we do this every year, Minister, at the beginning of each year or the end of going into the new year, which is to ask our listeners, what do you want us to talk about going into the next year? And one of the things that we got a whole lot of this year by text and call and you name it, is people saying to us, we don't know enough about what this process is, constitutional reform. And then we started doing our own little anecdotal research and found out that our audience is woefully not up to speed with this. Not only that, they have checked out. And I'm talking about the IRFM audience. And so that they have checked out. So we know that part of our responsibility, because this is so important, is to help to bridge that gap. So this is why we called Apka Fitzhenley. I said, nephew, listen now. Every time we ask a member of the JLP to come in, they always say no. Yes, I don't know why. Do you know why? Why, remember something?
Let me begin by saying good morning and good morning to the listeners.
You're not going to answer that, do you?
For this Irish Sunday morning. I'm not aware at all, but I'm so pleased to be here. Had I not made it, perhaps you'd be wondering if I too were saying no.
Exactly.
But I am under the weather and I was without a voice for most of yesterday.
I saw you working very hard this week, last week, so I understand that.
So,
yeah. How are you
I'd
now?
like to believe that if an invitation were extended and not accepted, there was good reason.
All right. Thank you so much for that.
And nothing political.
But I don't even know why, because we're not political here. So
Right.
So
I remember Ira FM in the early days when we used to hear, wake them up, Dion, wake them up.
Yeah, so you've been here from 1990.
But I was
Welcome.
listening.
Yeah.
I was listening on the way in. You had Professor Vereen Shepherd, and I think there were 4 important themes I heard recurring. The importance of not politicizing this process, or of what exactly is involved in the process, the link with reparation, and the need for public education. So here we are in our 63rd year since the attainment of political independence, and we are pursuing the goal of furthering independence in Jamaica. Our form of government is a monarchy, which is set out in the Constitution of Jamaica, the Jamaica Constitution, Order in Council, 1962. Yes. And for many decades, there has been agreement that we should move to have a Jamaican head of state instead of the British monarchy, the hereditary monarchy. In order for us to achieve that change, we have to pass a law. We have to amend the highest law of the land, the Constitution. So the change will only happen through the lawmaking process. And we have been talking, and we have talked and talked a lot. And every time the process picks up speed, the talks appear to overtake. And
paralysis of analysis.
I recall someone saying to me, you know, Jamaica's culture is unique in this regard, because it almost appears as if some people think that mere talk will bring the changes we have agreed to make. On the contrary. So the Constitution has different types of provisions, and we categorize them in 3 based on the procedure that is required to change them. The provisions that have the highest level of protection are regarded as the deeply entrenched provisions. So when you entrench something deeply, you bury them. It's almost out of easy reach. All of the major provisions that relate to the monarch are deeply entrenched. And
all the provisions relating to the King of England. We just
we know have the
monarch,
king.
But no, because we have the king.
We now have the king. At the time of independence, it was the queen.
Entrenched.
And it is the queen that is named in the Constitution,
and not the monarch, and not the
monarch per se.
Monarch. So
No,
in that
the queen.
case, then it's null and void.
The queen. Well, no, because queen is defined to include heirs assigned. So the Constitution, as we have it, begins with at the court at Buckingham Palace, the 23rd day of July, 1962, present the Queen's most excellent majesty in council, Her Majesty, by virtue and in exercise of the powers in that behalf, and it goes on and on.
Let me drink some coffee. That is enough
Right.
to make you vomit.
Well,
Well, not you, but me. But Minister, let me just say this to you, because considering how things are deeply entrenched, and especially that relating to the monarchy, wouldn't it have been easier? And this is a really serious question I'm asking, so and I'm not. It's not even facetious. To just repeal and replace the Constitution instead of trying to patch something that is so deeply connected to a whole other kind of reality, which is the Buckingham Palace and the monarchy.
Well, the process that we're using is the same process that would be required to put a brand new constitution in place.
But are you putting a brand new constitution in place?
We are doing it in phases. Why in phases? Because change can be unsettling, and what we have found is that changes have to be administered. And the design of the Constitution itself is in different parts and different provisions. It's not the intention to change what has worked well for Jamaica, what we are familiar with, but to change those things that have not worked for us or which need to be improved. So at the end of the day, the new constitution will have new provisions and it will have retained provisions that we accept as ours. The constitution was in fact drafted in Jamaica, contrary to what many people believe. It was debated in the Parliament of Jamaica, but in the colonial era, it was done with the assistance of the Colonial Office, and it came into effect by a special order in council through the colonial provisions, in Buckingham Palace. So the intention is not to throw out everything.
But
because
why not?
after all, well, Jamaica has had stability in its democracy in spite of the challenges that
It is the Constitution.
We have. When you have constitutional supremacy, the Constitution itself tells you the process by which you change your laws.
But stability at what cost? Because let us take, for example, something that we talk about a lot in this space, which is the colonial laws, and particularly those relating to rights and access. Access, for example, to land, access to the beach. This is something that is a vexing issue because that is still being almost weaponized by both administrations over time. We've watched this. It is, especially for us on this corridor, we've lost everything in terms of access to the beach.
Unfortunate.
When you leave here, I would say to my guest after leaving here, do you have time? I could want to go on the beach, go do so and so and so and
right.
so. There are shops and, we can have some okra and so on and so forth. But you can't get that anymore. There's just no access. And I don't want to go off on that tangent, but say.
But on the issue of access, it is really how the area is built up, because no one can deny anyone access along the beach.
No one can deny?
Properly so.
No one
law.
should deny.
In law. I'm just.
But no one should deny.
In law, right.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have is a lack of access to get to the beach. And when you're walking on the beach, the access to the properties
right.
that adjoin the beach. If you choose the example of beach access, immediately we're going to get into contention, because I do share the view of Jamaicans that we have to get to the stage where access is permitted and access is properly prescribed. I look on Cayman, for example, on their 7 Miles Beach. As you go along, you see areas defined. I think, though, that for Jamaica, we have had so many other issues. We have had so many other things that have brought us to this place. So we should pick an issue out of context.
No, I don't want to. That's why I said I don't want to go off. What I was pointing to is really the colonial laws. I'm saying that the Constitution has worked for us. You talk about stability in democracy, and this is where I was going. That at what cost? And in terms of whatever that stability is, because chaos is not always bad, Chaos sometimes is a precursor to change, and we probably need a little bit of that if we are well informed, if we have enough information going ahead to kind of weather the storm as we are changing.
I don't share the view that chaos is good. I said
it's not always bad.
That's I don't share that view, but you're talking about if we have information. And I believe a lot of the conversation that took place in the first hour was about the knowledge gap in the society, the lack of understanding. People have not been taught how governments run. Professor Shepherd herself was bemoaning the lack of a historical perspective.
Yes, why is there no historian on the CRC?
So Professor Shepherd, I think, provided the answer to you. We have a member from the National Council on Reparation who is the chair and then feeds back. But the primary link for the historical work is through the reparation process. And this part of the work is not focusing on the reparation. The reparation work is being led through the Ministry of Culture. But as she rightly indicated, access to the resources required. So let's be clear now. I began by saying that there is a process that you have to go through in order to make the change to achieve the goals that we have to achieve. And that is primarily a lawmaking process. It's not about the talk. It's not about holding the forum at all, important as this is. It will only happen after a law is passed in the parliament and then it is approved by the people. That is how it will happen. So first of all, we have to agree on what changes we would like to make. And so far, there seems to be no disagreement among those who have had their voices heard, substantially so, that we should have a Jamaican head of state instead of the hereditary British monarch.
Right. So that is agreed
even
upon,
though you know there is still a small number of Jamaicans who are monarchists.
Yes, I know that.
But that's the essence of a democracy, right? And that goal can only be achieved by making the amendment to the Constitution, not by the talk.
Hold on, point. Let me go to a break before Shamara kick me out. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Situation affecting you or your constituency, if in any way.
So, what Bob says, so much trouble in the world. Boy, there are so many things to distract us. So we have to keep our focus. Right now, I am keeping focus on going through this process to have a Jamaican head of state for our Jamaican people, representative of our Jamaican nationality and our Jamaican identity, and who can be a unifying force in the nation. The move is, we're not moving to an executive presidential system where we have a head of state and head of government in the same person. We are retaining our parliamentary cabinet system, and we are changing out the form of government. We're going to the Republican form of government.
So this is a contentious issue because we heard the former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson coming into the fray just on the weekend here, I think maybe a day or two ago, to say that he'll take to the streets if he has to, if the process of the parliamentary president is done in such a way as to have, I think it's a prime minister, appoint a president. Your own thinking on this, because what's the consensus so far? Has there been consensus on what the president should look like? We know that there's consensus and that it's not going to be an executive president. I do not even know how we got to that place, because I think it would have been better to have an executive president. But let us say there's consensus on this.
You are saying that the former prime minister is telling the people that he's prepared to take to the street.
But didn't you hear him? That was on the news. I mean, that was a clip, unless it's AI. I don't know.
That is most unfortunate. Of all the things that he would take to the street, or that would require, or who should be an elder statesman taking to the street, that is what he would take to the street about?
Well, I can't disagree with you on that, you know.
Seriously?
No, I really can't disagree with you on that.
Seriously?
I thought the very same thing, but he has a point. But think about it. So the point he's making is that if the process continues, let's just forget the take to the street, because he's not the only one who has an issue with this, is he?
Yeah, but again, our tendency to create problems and then to step in to try to be the hero by providing solution is just unfortunate. We are going through a process. We're going through a process. The former prime minister would have spoken more than the current prime minister about pursuing the changes that we are pursuing, and it never happened. It never happened. The goals, we have taken an approach to honor the work done by those who went before, because it's the same issue that we're contending with, right? We may never know what the possibilities are if we don't get on the road to republic. If we continue to stay in the monarchy, we would be talking. I recall when I made one of my first presentations, I I borrowed a quotation from Dr. the Honorable Lloyd Barnett, who said that we could very well find King Charles on the throne, and it is now a reality. Another member says we may very well find King George on the
I
throne.
heard that really, I almost,
And of
when he
all
said
the
that,
things that
Yes.
the former Prime Minister would choose to take to the street on is that, why wouldn't he then seek to engage the process in a different way? We are going through a joint select committee. We are reviewing the bill, and the matter is open for discussion. As a matter of fact, the changes made to the method of appointing the president was made as a result of comments that former Prime Minister and former Prime Minister Golding and others made in relation to the recommendation of the committee. The advisory committee comprises representatives from the government side in the parliament, the opposition side in the parliament, and the wider society. It mirrors the process that is required: a vote, government, opposition, and the people.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot withhold expression of my disappointment that of all the things that you're going to take to the street about, that is it.
And I see you're smiling now, but
Seriously?
you're also holding back rage.
Seriously?
At this, right? There's a bit of anger
Man,
in your
leadership, this country
But
needs
are you
the
Are
exercise
you
of
open to these
leadership.
kinds? Are you open to these kinds of disagreements, though? To what extent are you open to these kinds of disagreements? Read this process. You were the one who said early in the day that this was going to be a tricky process. That's the word you used.
Anti-Kabu, as they call you. Anti-Kabu.
I mean, politician, yes. Yes, Marlene.
Yeah. Agreement was reached a long time ago on transition to a non-executive president. Our Governor General is not entirely ceremonial. So we have avoided using the term ceremonial president. But even if we were to use it, Professor Shepherd will tell you there is still an important place for ceremony. And ceremony marks important occasion, things that people should pause and pay attention to. But the many years of economic mismanagement of Jamaica has relegated ceremonial matters to what is cheap and common as a deflection from the real issues. And so when people hear about ceremony now, they don't have a clue what it is about. But Professor Shepherd would tell you, and you're in the African Forum now, places like the tribal Africa places a great emphasis on ceremonial matters because they awaken consciousness.
Ritual.
Awaken consciousness in the people.
There's some things that we cannot continue talking about. This break we have to take. I'm so sorry.
Take the break.
So we are going to go to the Supreme Ventures draw. So listen up. Top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, hot pick and cash spot early bird draws are coming up next. Of today's winners, join us again at 10:30 a.m. for another chance to win in top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, hot pick and cash spot draws. My apologies. All right, so I'm seeing your texts, I'm seeing your messages. The telephone lines will be open shortly for you to speak directly with Minister Malahoo Ford. All right, the process, Minister, because I know we're jumping all over the place in the interest of time, but the process is as it is. And you talked us through we haven't even touched much on it, but the Jamaicanization is really phase one of the Constitution. And then the process of the president, installing a president or electing a president. There's also consensus on that, you're saying, which is, so there's no consensus on an executive president, but a parliament. It's a parliamentary president that is called? Or a ceremonial president?
Let's just, so we have a clear vision of what we would like to see achieved in this constitutional reform work. At the end of the day, we want to promulgate
We're not
a
hearing
new
you, Minister.
constitution.
Is your microphone on? Okay, all right, go ahead.
At the end of the day, we want to promulgate a new constitution. A new constitution will have provisions that we retain from the existing constitution, as well as new provisions. But it is about Jamaica. It is about our development aspirations. It is about the realities of Jamaica, the journey we have taken so far, an appreciation of where we are and where we would like to go. So we are abolishing the monarch as our head of state. And if you're abolishing it, the question arises as to what would you replace it with? And we have agreed that we will replace it with a president as the head of state of Jamaica, not the head of the political side of Jamaica, but head of the state of Jamaica. There is government and there is state. And what we heard from the people is that they didn't want a president that would be partisan. They want a president that could be a unifying force and that would be symbolic of our national identity and our national unity. And those values help to determine what type of president. It's a conversation that was had a long time ago. Tension, do we move at one stage? The suggestion was for us to go to an executive presidential system similar to what is in the United States, where the head of state would also be the head of government. All right. In that case, the entire creature is political. You don't have the separation of someone who sits above the partisan political fray to unify the nation. Because the state of Jamaica will exist regardless of who forms government. The state of Jamaica doesn't change because government may be formed by the PNP or it is formed by the Jamaica Labour Party. And it's important that we understand that. And so the move to a non-executive president means that it is a president who would not be involved in the day-to-day running of the country, but who would nevertheless discharge certain important functions similar to those performed by the current Governor General.
Mm-hmm. All right. So do you understand or at least can see where former Prime Minister Patterson is coming from when he says, forget the taking to the streets, when he says this is something that he doesn't want. And it seems to be, and you can tell me if there's consensus within the CRC about that, or is a former Prime Minister speaking on his own behalf, or is it something that is also accepted by the people, by the opposition, and what would that mean for the process?
The Constitutional Reform Committee recommended that we would create the office of president for a non-executive president because we would be retaining the parliamentary system. Mm-hmm. The executive presidential system is a completely different system from what we know and from what we are familiar with. Completely different system. We could get there at some point. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But if you are changing,
when you say we could get there at some point, what does that mean? Would that be written into the process to say this is a temporary situation, and then later on?
No, you would have to make the change again when the decision is taken.
Mm-hmm. But and that change would include the same processes, which would be it would involve you would be merging your head of state. I myself, I'm not familiar sufficiently with the executive presidential system. There are different versions of it. Mm-hmm. We see in the US, we see it in Latin America, where at one time it was exposed as the way to go. Mm-hmm. Latin America has experienced more instability with that form of government than any other place, while the Caribbean sub-region, in spite of its economic challenges, has remained stable in its democracy. I do not understand you. We disagree on that word stability within democracy, in a very serious way, because at what cost?
No. We can disagree about stability. Stability does not mean that you accept everything. Stability does not mean that you do not desire change. What it means is that even in the presence of your challenges, you can work through with a functioning government. Look at instability in Haiti with an executive presidential system where you have no government. Whether we have challenges with government or not.
But that has nothing to do with whether it's democracy or not democracy in Haiti.
It does.
No, it doesn't. Because
Among
remember
other
that a
things.
democratically elected government, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was overthrown. So that's democracy that was overthrown by the U.S. So
There
it's the external factors.
There is no one issue. Haiti, I am not an expert on Haiti.
There's a one issue. It's France and the United States. But we're going to go. Yes, it is. France, the United States, Europe, and the rest of them who have determined that Haiti must be punished for the rest of its life because of freedom and independence at 1804. So we cannot use Haiti as an example.
I am not using Haiti as an example. I'm simply saying to you that governments will exist. The opposite is complete anarchy, and we know that nothing can be achieved worthwhile in a state of anarchy.
How do you get change though? Because there must be a way for change to change itself. It cannot be as smooth as you are, as you're expecting us to believe.
Why do you think that I'm expecting it to be smooth?
Oh, you're not?
I don't understand you. But
you're talking about stability. All right, so what is going to happen? There has to be
government still needs to function.
True, I'm not saying no to that.
But that is the point I am making.
But sometimes governments have to be thing there too.
I don't know what is the thing there.
Well, we'll talk about it another time.
The reason I am in government where I am, it is because I would like to see better government. I would like to see a more responsive government. I would like to see government operating in the best interest of the people. But we're talking about
how does government operate within the best interest of the people? Well, we're phasing this, right? But with the Constitution as it is, that's why I went to the colonial laws, because the colonial laws that are weaponized, for example, the way, and I'm using this one because I know this one.
Anti-Kabul. If we jump all over the place, I don't know that it will be helpful to the listeners. There are a number of issues that we have problem with. A number of things.
I'll take that point because we do have to get to the calls.
We are a nation with a grievance culture. The grievance exists within ourselves, within our families, within our communities, and within our nation. We're still
What is the cause of those grievances, though?
I don't believe there is any single cause.
A big part of it is the Constitution as it is today.
No,
it is. It's a weaponization of colonial laws against the people of Jamaica.
But the colonial laws, we have passed a lot of laws in Jamaica, in independent Jamaica, that have nothing to do with our colonial master. A lot of the laws have had to do with our economic reality. We have we are still a young nation struggling with self-determination. We see glimpses of what we can be. We have a potential that is great, but we are yet to realize that potential. We see pockets of excellence, which tells us that Jamaicans are as good as the best and sometimes better than the rest. But we have not mainstream excellence in our culture. All right. We see so much of what we would like to be. We want the outcome, but not the process.
All right, let's go back to the process.
And see Jamaicans have succeeded, the discipline that comes with it. Any of our gold medal athletes.
Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I take the point you're making about if we really do jump all over the place, that we won't get anywhere. So in terms of what we're talking about here now, which is the Constitution, the reform, the road to republic. There's a question, in the back of all of this. If there is no consensus at this stage, because you talk about that which is deeply entrenched, we have the opposition leader now saying, and we know this is the view of the opposition, that the CCJ, if that is not included, then they're walking away. Then we have the former Prime Minister on the matter of the president. If there is no consensus within the time frame, first of all, what's the time frame to get this the referendum off the ground? What time frame are we looking at?
For the changes that we're pursuing, the bill, which I've brought a copy here, the Constitution itself tells you that when the bill is placed before the Parliament, you can't debate it immediately. 3 months have to pass before you can start the debate after you have tabled it. And the 3 months really are to be used to ensure that everyone is familiar with the content of it. The day the bill was tabled, on the 10th of December, and 2024, it was made available to the public. All right?
Yeah.
Electronically, in all of the places. It's on the various websites. We have printed copies. We have distributed copies.
And it's well advertised.
And between, December, January, February, March, what we have done is to have it reviewed by a joint select committee of the Parliament, comprising members of both sides. Since the first meeting, the opposition members have not attended. We have been receiving submissions from the public. We have not yet gotten to the stage where we will either invite them or do the review. We are receiving them and we're reading through them. And we are going to hear Jamaica's response to the provisions of the bill.
All right.
Now, some of the submissions that have come are speaking to other issues that are not in the bill. It's very difficult for us to maintain discipline as a free-spirited people.
So
we want to do it when we want it, how we want it.
So what we're looking at now is the bill.
It's the bill.
This is what we're looking at.
This is what we're looking at.
If the opposition hasn't been since
the opposition, we proceeded. Prime Minister Holness responded to a call that was made by others before he became Prime Minister, and the same response did not happen. So for previous Prime Ministers who talked more about constitutional reform and didn't take to the street, but want to take to the street now that the bill is before the Parliament, it's just unfortunate. So the Prime Minister was called upon to take the necessary steps to abolish the monarchy because there was no dispute and disagreement in the Parliament about it.
Right.
So the same former Prime Minister wrote to the current Prime Minister. The opposition leader wrote to the Prime Minister. And every year when we get to independence, the nation invites a reflection on how much we have achieved since independence. And the Prime Minister, in good faith, decided to respond and proceed.
What
when
if there is
Jamaica
no consensus on this?
Because hold on, don't rush me yet, because it's important. I know
you're the one who
there.
told me not to go all over the place, in the interest of time.
Yes, but context matters.
Right.
And we can't wish away the context.
All right, so let's go context.
Because the point about the disagreement is a point that needs some understanding about the background. The call came to proceed on the matters on which there was agreement. And as far as we know, there is agreement that we should proceed in abolishing the monarch as our head of state. The opposition has since called for more. Now, when the work began, it began with terms of reference, and those terms of reference were agreed. And the terms clearly indicated that matters such as the final court would come in the second phase of the work.
All right.
Now,
so phase one, phase two.
Phase one, phase two, and phase three.
So phase one is?
Phase one is abolition of the monarchy, dealing with the deeply entrenched provisions, establishing Jamaica as a republic, putting the constitution in proper form, taking it out of the imperial order in council, have it published on its own as the supreme law of the land, and any other matter on which there is consensus in the Parliament.
What does it mean to abolish the monarchy? And this is what I think I hear the opposition saying.
Head of state.
Which is the CCJ, the Privy Council, the highest court of appeal, now becomes part of that whole monarchical...
And I totally understand what the opposition is asking for. I understand.
And the point you're making is
But which final court is best for Jamaica is not which final court is best for the PNP or which final court is best for the Jamaican Labour Party.
Why is this such a problem?
Because there is disagreement, not only within the parliament, but within the wider society on what that final court should be, because there are three options that are available.
Right.
Jamaicans can choose to retain the Privy Council. Choose, not have it
Like
as a
Trinidad?
continuation. It can be a matter of choice. Right?
Yes.
Because they're saying justice is to be delivered at arm's length. There are some serious issues that need to be addressed about the current arrangement with the Privy Council. Very serious issues. Then the Caribbean Court of Justice was established as a community court with an appellate jurisdiction also to deal with the Caribbean community matters. The revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which established the Caribbean single market. We haven't gotten to the single economy yet. The CSME, but with the CSM. Jamaica is a member of the court for Caribbean community matters. And we know of the very popular case of Shanique Myrie, which dealt with freedom of movement within the Caribbean community. We are a member of the court. The question is, should Jamaica accede to the appellate jurisdiction? But there are Jamaicans who are also saying, hold on, why should we move from Jamaica to Port of Spain? Why can we not establish a Jamaican final court? And there are many arguments.
This is an issue.
There are many arguments to be considered because the question of cost, can we afford it? Have we sufficiently resourced the other courts below? But you don't get to a final court before you have a decision from your trial court or from your first appellate court.
All right.
So
but at the same time, you
people are being
said,
denied justice if you don't change the final court is not true. But
at
there
the same
are
time, Minister,
issues of concern.
at the same time, you've said that this issue of the final court will be
In another
dealt
phase.
with in phase 2.
Yes.
All right. So let's hold that for the minute.
Yes.
I want to go back to at what point does this whole process become almost null and void if there is
Good
no
point.
consensus?
But again,
generally.
again, for the benefit of the listeners,
Yeah.
for the benefit of the listeners, what I understand the parliamentary opposition to be saying is that they still are not clear what is the government's stance on accession to the appellate jurisdiction. One issue. The other thing is that they feel that there is no certainty that the reforms would continue into the other phases after this first phase is done. Because
But that's a very
taken-
good point, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Knowing our
Absolutely.
history.
And that's why I'm saying I understand, because the same prime minister who has told the people that he's going to take to the street, he was not able to get the work to this point.
Minister,
it stopped.
Are
with
you
the
also
report.
in danger of tribalizing this thing?
Well,
Because I think you're in danger of
You think
tribalizing.
I
Just
am?
listening to you, but going back to the same prime minister.
responding to those who are
No,
tribalizing
no.
it puts me in danger.
No, you're not. You are not in danger.
Hold
Not
on
you
there.
in danger,
Pause
but the
there now.
process is in danger.
Pause there
Because-
now. Lawmaking will not escape a political aspect. Prime Minister Holness took the decision.
Not political, but
Hold on,
tribal.
Hold on. It can't be seen as tribal if you are responding to something. Why are you?
It is how, though.
Why are you? But why don't you call out the how? Why don't you call out the how of others? Because I'm responding to say it
you're
is
obviously not a listener to this
unfortunate.
program. I have been calling out the
Hear
how.
me now, man.
As a
Hear
matter
me.
of fact, let me just
Hear
say
me,
something to
listeners.
you. I do not necessarily, personally, and I can say this
You're
to
asking
camera.
me about the stalling of the
No,
process.
I do not necessarily agree with the opposition and the CCJ and the Privy Council. I've spoken to enough lawyers
Yes.
already,
But
and very
responding
good
don't make
friends
me
close
tribal.
to me who have said to me that, listen, I'm with phase 2. People who I trust have said this to me. I am dealing with this in phase 2. There's so much to do in getting rid of the monarchy right now that we should concentrate on that because of where we are. And this is why I kept saying to you, at what point do we find ourselves with where we were before? Because this is not the first time. I think this is the furthest that we've come. But at what point does this whole process become null and void, or does it? Or
Part of the challenge that we're facing is where we are in the life of the parliament, because it's an election year, and typically you would want to be saying to the people that we are at one, and just bear with me. I want you to bear with me, because
right.
Jamaica
Do you want me to take a
needs...
break and come back and bear with you?
No. If you must go to a break, that's fine, but I don't need a break.
There's always a must, but go ahead.
I don't need a break. I'm simply saying to the people of Jamaica, earlier in your comments, you were talking about if we do it the same way, we're going to get the same results. It was either you or Professor Shepherd.
Yes.
So I'm saying that we have agreed on a goal. Certainly Prime Minister Holness and the Labour Party administration has made it clear that we are not going to put this as a Jamaica Labour Party achievement, as it were. But any government that is elected to govern will have its achievement if you do the work that you are supposed to do. The goals were agreed, and we are pursuing the goals because we see our election as an election to govern, and part of it is getting on with the things on which we have agreed. It's a legacy issue in the same way that we have had to pick up a number of legacy issues on the economic front, a number of projects that were announced, good projects that if implemented would be in the best interest of Jamaica. We got on with it. We got on with it. So for this matter of having a Jamaican head of state, it is something that we believe is in the interest of Jamaica. We don't want a head of state that is foreign to us. We don't want a head of state that we can't even go and visit freely.
But we also don't want a head of state that is going to be appointed on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. I agree with that.
All right. So let's talk about why that process is the way it is. A Prime Minister comes into office after democratically held elections. Prime Minister is the head of government that would be in charge of the day-to-day running of government in a parliamentary
already not
system.
chosen by the people, but chosen by the party, the delegates.
So that is the real tension in the society.
Right.
That is the real tension.
And this is why the president must be chosen by the people.
Yes, but it's not going to solve the problem that people believe.
What is the problem?
The ask for a directly elected president is a proxy issue around how a prime minister gets into office. Is this your personal view, your legal view, or a party view? No. It's what we have distilled from our consultation with the people.
Which people? Because nobody consulted with me. And I'm just telling you straight. Nobody consulted with me.
Do you know the difference between a parliamentary system and an executive presidential system? No, I'm asking.
I do.
All
no,
right.
but for our listeners, though.
No,
for
seriously. Because my question is not one to say if you don't something.
No, I understand, because I've already said to you that we're ignorant on a lot of stuff, but that I do know.
Exactly.
So the point I'm making to you that, but I might know this, or too many of our listeners do not know.
But Jamaicans are also saying that they want a head of state that is not going to be partisan. And if you put the head of state through the partisan process, chances are you're going to get a partisan.
Well, this
product.
is
right?
the bane of our existence.
Because many times, even though your prime minister is prime minister of all of the nation, when you start talking about which party the prime minister is elected on, people become encamped. Me a Labourite, you a comrade. You a comrade, me a Labourite.
Right. Please do not point at me when you say anything.
No, you a Labourite,
I'm apolitical over here, right? Just Pan-African doing, making sure that they do not kill us again.
The tension in the society,
But the same thing exists if the prime minister.
Accountability.
But the same
accountability
thing
in government
exists if the prime minister selects the president.
The prime minister is not.
It's the very same partisan thing. Okay, I don't know. The two things then, you have a better chance.
It's a two-stage process, Okay. A nomination process and a confirmation process.
And who confirms?
Nominate the parliament. And
Well, there you go.
But the parliament comprises the people's representatives.
Really? Since when?
What do you think an election
You
is?
do. Listen, it is what it is. I know what it is supposed to be, but we're dealing with the isness of things. No, the parliament is
Anti-Kabu.
Listen, what is on the books different from the reality?
Anti-Kabu.
Yes, Marlene.
Freely, periodically elected parliament is the foundation of your democracy. We do
that
have
is a
issues.
theory.
Hold on a man. No,
that is not the reality.
No, it's
but
not.
What we are living,
But
Marlene, how are you going to tell us that what we're living is not what we're living?
I am not saying to you that
we're
the other
experiencing
issues are not real. I am not saying that.
We do not experience members of parliament as our representatives. We don't know them. We don't see them. They do not listen to us. They do not care one fig about us.
So let us talk about making those changes now. I don't know
that's
if it is that you don't see them. No, but you can't say, I am fully on board with every Jamaican who want to see a reformed parliament, fully on board, because the real work of the parliament is to pass laws for peace, order, and good government.
God help us.
Earlier, I heard Professor Shepard talking about the hairstyle policy. All right. So school boards are put in place, and school boards have their own remit for the proper administration of the school.
Yes.
And the board will put in policies in keeping with the Ministry of Education policy. And by the way, there is no policy of the government.
All right, let me let Marlene, Minister Ford, Marlene Ford, drink some water, turn off the mics, and let us get some, because she's having the flu. Let us go our 5 ads in the program moving from here. The Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And you know what? We're going to go straight to the telephone lines because we know we have quite a few callers backed up. I have already invited the minister to return to the studio at a time convenient to her during this entire process. So we'll just go, once she comes in, I'll just say, good morning, minister, open the phone lines and take your calls. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Greetings.
Greetings.
Hi, greetings, my sister. How are you doing?
I am good, sister.
All right, give thanks. Go ahead with your question for the minister.
So just to introduce myself briefly, I am Dr. Kheru Mack. I'm representing the Rastafari Mansions and Organizations, a group that represents an umbrella group of the Rastafari community. And there are 14 member organizations that have formally signed a constitution of the Rastafari movement. And so this is kind of historical for Jamaica. Mm-hmm. This group had submitted a written submission based on the public notice in the Jamaica Gleaner, January 27th. And by the way, that was only 2 days before the deadline of January 29th, which we also feel is insufficient for proper public deliberation. Nevertheless, the RMO submitted a formal submission, and we are using this opportunity to really bring public acknowledgement of this, and also to thank the ministry for the opportunity, but to give it proper credence as to what it is really saying. Mm-hmm. So as you will know, the Rastafari community has been historically one of those opposing the system of the monarchy. So we are appreciative of the fact that it is the main focus of phase 1. But like other national entities, we are very concerned that there won't be other phases to this process per se. We know that the average lifespan of the national constitution is 17 years. So we must put forward the Rastafari community interests. And the main effort of this submission is to have Rastafari formally recognized within the Constitution, so that any changes here to be would be considering the Rastafari community and its particular needs, given that there has been a history of victimization, even from the formal acknowledgement of the state, that there was state atrocities in 1963 with the Coral Gardens incident. We've heard several comments previously about aid, and we feel that even though some, aid has been given to the Coral Gardens victims, that this is just, a small drop in the ocean of what is required to have proper reparation.
Yes.
And also there has been just a history from that time of lack of consistent and substantive acknowledgement of the violation of rights that continue until this day. Many instances which we won't have time to give here, but the listeners must know of these.
Yes.
We heard about the hairstyle policy. We know of Nzinga King. We have countless incidents of children being, barred from school because of vaccination issues. I mean, I can go on and on.
Yes.
And the ganja
we understand the breadth and the depth of that rights of Rastafari generally across Jamaica. Dr. Kheru, can we allow the minister to respond now, or do you have a bit more to say on this?
Well, just to kind of make the point, because we can anticipate that the response will be that, one, that this is not the phase to be talking about the rights issues. And secondly, that, that the Rastafari community will just have to be within the usual institutions and processes of the rest of the national entities. And what we want to say is that this has not served the community in the past, and we don't have any confidence that it will be in the future.
Okay.
So the real call in this related to the bill, because the bill does start with, the preservation of Jamaican culture and to the principles of justice, equity, and truth, and to the upholding of the rights of all. This is within the bill. So we're referring to that preamble particularly and asking for specific recognition of the Rastafari community in a constitution that may not be changed again for the next 17 years.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kheru. Minister.
Morning, Dr. Kheru. First of all, let me thank you for submitting. Your submission would have been received. The timeline should not have been that short. I hear you about the concerns and the fear as to whether there will be another phase. All I can say to you is that it is my hope that putting the bill before the Parliament would be a real demonstration to the people that we are serious this time, that we are prepared to move beyond the talk to implement the things that we agree on. I can assure you that as long as I am here, you and your group will be heard, that we will go through the issues to gain a better understanding. I fully subscribe to our out of many one people motto. It is work in progress. We're nowhere near that. I don't believe wisdom resides in any single place. And I do look forward to reading the submission that you have prepared and made. Thank you so much. The journey of the 100 miles or the 1,000 miles is going to be taken step by step. If we stand still, we'll never make progress. I am aware of many of the issues in the Rastafarian community, and I look forward to formally engaging with you. I dealt with some of the issues earlier in the previous Parliament with Coral Gardens when we made progress on the issue. The apology and the establishment of the fund, I assisted with that process behind the scene. There are a lot of things that we need to deal with. Now, the rights issues are so large that we really have to spend some time to deal with them. But I'm really pleased that you have taken the time to respond to the ad, and you've made a submission. Look forward to the engagement to come.
And so the right issues are in phase 2?
The right issues are in phase 2. And because, and there's a reason for that, the Charter, Chapter 3, was the most recent amendment to the Constitution and the most up-to-date part of it. But since it was enacted, we have had calls for it to look at it again. We're 10, 11 years down the road. When we signal that we were prepared to look at it, the opposition leader said, well, don't go there yet, because it's the most recently amended section of the Constitution. Again, part of the reason why it is in the next phase. But can I tell you that I'm so looking forward to that phase?
All right, let's go. Let's take another call. Greetings. Hello, caller, you there?
Greetings.
Greetings.
Yeah, I'm here. Greetings.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Devon Taylor from Jabem.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Devon Taylor. Are you calling from?
I'm not hearing.
He's Dr. Devon Taylor from Jabem.
Yes.
Do you know Jabem?
He was about to say what it is.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
the
Devon.
Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement. So, listening to this conversation, and I'm going to segue off rights. So you just mentioned that, rights is in phase 2. But what I'm here to say is that there are several laws on the books, right, that predate the Constitution and are protected under saving clause, arrangement. So these laws are colonial, all right? I mean, we're talking about the Beach Control Act of 1956. We're talking about the Obia Act of 1898. Both of these are currently violating our constitutional rights. One on freedom of religion and one for freedom of discrimination. I don't see why we would be moving forward with a constitutional arrangement while we have laws on our book that are violating our rights but are protected on a saving clause. If we are truly about empowerment of the Jamaican people and removing the king is empowering the Jamaican people, why keep laws that were made by the king's government in place? Why are we not removing those simultaneously?
Right. Okay, so do you have another question or that's it, Devon?
Now, the next question I have is around if we can't, move to all of these in a phase 1 approach, why not institute a trigger in the system for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? Let's say when phase 1 is passed, within 2 years, phase 2 would come on stream, or within 2 years, phase 3 would come on stream. So the people know that these things are definitely coming, and we're not going to wait in perpetuity for phase 2 and phase 3.
All right, thank you, Devon. Minister?
Well, not all laws that were passed in the colonial period are bad laws. So, for example, making it a crime to steal from others, that came from the colonial period. That's not a bad law.
But he referenced two in particular.
I'm just saying that generally. So there are mixed views about Obia in Jamaica. For some, they identify it with certain practices and others are terrified about it. So again, process is as important as outcome. We have to talk about these things. Like I say, I understand the beach access issue. I am with the people on the beach access issue. On the Obia issue, I think we have to talk about that one a little more.
I think this is why the historian is important, to contextualize the issues like those.
But just to say that when Prime Minister Holness established the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Ministry, it was done with a view to taking a look at all of our laws. But it's not going to happen overnight. I hear Devon making the suggestion that the phases should be timed to help persons at least give a guarantee that it will happen. All I can say that a Labour Party in government will pursue the phases. I can't speak for another party. Prime Minister Holness's establishment of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs was a public demonstration of his administration's seriousness.
So bearing that in mind, why not time it?
But we're saying that is why we move to put the bill in the parliament, so that while we are taking the steps to educate around it, respond to it, we can then begin the process of the next phase.
Right.
But it is. So what the listeners need to understand is that our moving ahead with this is a clear demonstration of the seriousness of purpose, so we can get on with it, move the king out of the way, deal with the other changes that must come.
Is there a time limit on this? Is there a time that this must be done?
The time is set out in the Constitution itself. So 3 months after tabling, we would debate it. There's another 3 months before you pass it. It's passed in the lower house and it goes to the Senate.
Right.
If it is not passed within a month in the Senate, it comes back to the lower house, by which time we will be in a next parliament. But it can be done over parliament. When it is passed in the parliament, there's a minimum of 2 months and a maximum of 6 months for it to go to the people.
Right.
So timelines
So
are
if
set.
all things being well,
Right.
we're looking at what?
In the next parliament, we're looking at if all things go well, and depending on when the elections are held, after it is passed in the parliament, 2 to 6 months.
Okay. When's the referendum going to be?
2 to 6 months after it is passed. That
All
is
right.
what the law sets out.
All right.
So nothing goes to the people until something comes from the parliament. It's important that all listeners understand it. And it doesn't make sense we quarrel over it, because it is what it is.
So the bottom line
but
is
the
that
bill is also making the modification of the Constitution a little simpler and will help to speed it up in the proposed amendment to Section 49.
So the bottom line is this process is underway.
Yes.
And there are time limits to it. So it's a process that
So the
is
quicker we get it-
actively
Absolutely.
underway.
Right.
All right. Do I take a break?
So
you're saying?
again,
Okay.
the fact that we're saying, go ahead.
All right. Let me take a call. Let me take a quick call. Caller, good morning. Greetings.
Greetings. Am I on air?
Yes, you're live. You're live. Oh, hi. Stephanie Marley, this is. Hi,
Yes,
Steph.
Stephanie
Yes.
Marley. I'm representing the Marley family this morning.
Yes.
I have a question and a suggestion on behalf of our people
Yes.
of Jamaica.
Go ahead.
Comment first. The town hall provided engagement, and we were happy for that, but it insufficiently and inadequately provided proper education for the average Jamaican to understand even what the Constitution is, and more so their role in the process is not clear. And I'd just like to ask, what are the plans for properly educating the Jamaican people on this whole process and even their role in the referendum? And I'd really beg on behalf of Jamaicans that a timeline for the phases, even a tentative timeline for the phases, be put in place during this phase 1 process. Thank you.
All right. Minister, let me just say to our listeners again that Minister Marley Malahoo-Fort is battling a flu while she's taking all the calls. And we really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you,
being
Stephanie.
detailed.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Totally agree with you. Insufficient education, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to close the gap, the knowledge gap, in a short time. It will have to become a lifetime experience. I am a strong advocate for a special curriculum in our schools to help our people understand what it means to be a citizen, to help them understand how government run, an expanded curriculum. And I assure you that as long as we are there, it will happen. Again, I can't speak for another side forming government. Thank you for the feedback that it was good engagement. And I take the point of the insufficient education. Right now, the ministry is going into the schools, and a lot of things are happening.
So we have a situation. This is ongoing now with the schools.
Absolutely.
Because Professor
Absolutely.
Shepherd and myself, we were talking about that this morning.
Ongoing. You
Right.
see, there is so much being thrown at people
Yes.
right now. Information overload. I heard Professor
It's true.
Shepherd almost speaking nostalgically of what the move to independence would have been. We didn't have information communication technology. 10 minutes ago, information can be regarded as stale because so much is being thrown at you every minute
Yes.
to distract you. So we are not going to be able to correct overnight the deficiencies in our education system, but we have begun the process. And I know once hope is ignited, we want it all at once. But again, I say to the people, we have to almost relearn what it means to take a journey, what it means to move, to go through a process, because we want outcome without process. Nature tells us so much about process and outcome. We don't sow and reap the same day. Not even life itself is created. You go through a process of gestation. but I understand it.
Chaotic.
It's a loss.
Chaotic
It's a loss.
gestation.
Right? So the process, we're in process. I will go back to the ministry and I will look to see what indication of timeline. But I think what I would say to everyone, the fact that we are continuing the process, even though some are calling for it to be halted, should be seen as a commitment on the part of this government to go forward with
What's
it.
the likelihood of it being halted?
Well, only the elections, and it's not a matter of halting it. I can't speak for another party forming government. I can only tell you that the Jamaica Labour Party is committed to going through the process of reforming the constitution, of revising the laws, to make sure that our system is just for the people of Jamaica.
What if
That
the
is what we're
opposition
doing
doesn't
to do.
return to the table? Because it seems to me as if the contentious
it would be most
issue.
unfortunate. It would be most unfortunate. But the Constitution in its wisdom, the makers of the Constitution in their wisdom, including the Right Honourable Norman Manley from the People's National Party, understood that that's a possibility, that government and opposition may not agree.
And
it
so?
also provides a process for it, which will require a higher approval threshold from the people. I hope we don't have to get to that, right? I hope that the constructive exercise of leadership will emerge.
What if and I know the what ifs, but let's say the former Prime Minister PJ Patterson takes to the street with placard. Certainly the optics of that would be not so good. All right, let's go to a break. Watching you two is the antithesis of DEI. I may not know. This is C-SPAN quality, he says. Also like 19th century US 3/5 compromise. And them can't have a popular leader chosen by the Tiki-Taki tribe. President World Wars L.A. Lewis. No, it is funny. That's why I'm reading it. Anyway, he says that point on citizenship is key. And he talks about Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which is a film that I've watched many times. He says at the end of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, that was the ruling of the judge. You are free, but you are now a citizen. Very interesting. All right, let me go to the phone lines. Hello, caller. Good morning.
Good morning, Kheru.
Hi, I'm recognizing your voice. Good morning.
And
Sister
to
P.
the Running African family. Morning. My question is, what basically is the government or the opposition doing to inform the public about what constitutional reform is about? I live in rural Jamaica, and no disrespect to rural Jamaicans, but the people don't have a clue. They have no idea of what is happening out there. So decisions are being made for the people. And then you hear, oh, this is what the people want. That's not what the people want because they don't even know what's happening. In previous times, they would call meetings in the schools and the community would go and listen to whoever the presenter is. Or they would have town hall meetings. Or the town crier would go around and tell people that the meeting was happening, and then they would go. We hear nothing. We know nothing. So I want to know what is being done to address this problem.
All right. Thanks, Sister P. Minister?
Morning, Sister P. Thank you for your question. Like I say, we are doing town halls. We are going into the schools. It appears that even in this age of ICT, information, communication, and technology, there is an expectation that we would not utilize the modern platforms. Just about everyone has a smartphone. I mean, we come on radio, we run the ads, we go on the social platform spaces, we use traditional media. We have been having the town halls. It's still not enough.
Let me tell you something, Minister.
It's a whole lifetime. It's a whole lifetime.
Do you know that?
So I take
for us in the business,
more
right?
That needs to be done.
When, for example, when we're going out, and I used to do a whole lot of stuff here at IRFM, the town cry is what we use in the deep rural areas, because we understand,
Yeah,
we
man.
know the convergence of
Yeah,
the
man.
digital technologies,
Yeah,
but
man.
we have a bullhorn and we have a town cry. And I think this is what Sister P is saying, because she's in Portland and
Understood.
deep rural Portland.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
We also have recently engaged the assistance of communication professionals.
Mm-hmm.
We have been listening to the people, and we have been making the adjustment. And we have even done the pamphlets and the publication. Dr. Barnett assisted with a little simplified version of it. We will just have to make more available. But the truth is also that there are so many other things attracting the attention of the people. And I take very seriously the feedback that people want to hear more. They want to be more engaged. And we continue to go back to the drawing table to see how we can do it better. The more people hear about it, is the more excited they become. So we know the work is cut out for us. So just bear with
And
us.
for myself too,
Bear
I
with
think
us.
this is important. I was saying
Come
to Prof. Shepherd this morning that when I was in high school, I was up and down on the road, and it's a different time, with Jeffrey Mordecai and John Williams. I remember those two names, handing out Constitution. You know, walking from Highgate to Richmond, from Highgate to Fraserwood, from Highgate to Carrinall, just handing out the Constitution. And we were knocking on people's doors and handing out the Constitution, and I didn't even know why.
Auntie Kabu.
Yes, Marlene.
You're not going to lose the Auntie Kabu.
I
Come you
hear
tell me
you.
that, I grieve for Jamaica and what has happened for the many years of economic decline. When we got into independence, we were on a path that if we had managed ourselves better, we wouldn't be where we are now. And the years of economic decline meant cuts in programs, meant undoing things or just not doing things that should have been done to take us on the journey at a different pace. All of the excitement. And we have to be so careful that we don't make the same mistakes again. I am happy that we have managed to get to the discipline that was required across administration to deal, painfully as it was, the economic reforms, because it doesn't matter what we want to do. If your program is not sponsored, you can't be on air. If I don't have a means to get here, I can't get to you, right? Because the distance is too far to walk. And even if I were to walk, I would need some sustenance that would require things. So we totally underestimate what has happened to Jamaica and how our potential as a nation, as an independent nation, was stymied by those many decades of economic mismanagement in the affairs of the country. Because if you don't have money, you can't deal with the resources of the schools that you should. You can't deal with the resources of your hospital. You can't build out the infrastructure generally. We really are just picking up the pieces.
And that is why the question on the colonial laws is such an important question.
Why we are in the
because
process
that is
of doing
also
it. But I'm telling
responsible
you,
for part of the
but that's
economic
why
mismanagement.
But that's why we are in the process of doing it. That's why Prime Minister Holness in his wisdom realized
But
that
can
there was
Prime
a need
Minister
to
Holness
carve it
put a
out.
pause on weaponizing the Beach Control Act?
But
it's important to put a pause.
Without due respect,
Oh.
how do you see it being weaponized?
Listen, it has been weaponized by the previous administration.
No, but tell me what decision you see.
Let me tell you.
Let's move from generalization.
From how the act is being used in terms of what is called development. So private companies, whether it's foreign or local, have been sold land that provides access to the ocean. Now, the Beach Control Act provides for that to happen. And that is where the weaponization comes in. Somebody has to stop and
But
say...
the Beach Control Act protects the foreshore.
It protects the enslaver.
Beach.
It protects the oppressor. It protects the private sector. It protects those who can afford it. Doesn't protect the people. Protecting the beach means protecting the people.
A lot of the big beaches that were blocked off. They were blocked off when in the 1990s.
No, it's an ongoing process.
No, I'm just saying.
The majority of it has happened within the last 5 years,
Where?
right? Across Jamaica. Because remember, I'm monitoring this,
No, man.
I'm on this every day. I visit all of them.
No, man.
So within the last 7 to 5 years?
That's not the information that I have.
No, we can't test it right now.
Right. Let us not argue about that. Let us agree.
Right.
That
this is my scholarship.
Access,
so, and this is what I have found.
Let me agree with you. Let me agree with you that the issue of access to the beach is an issue that is near and dear to the people, and I support.
But this is not the point I'm making, though. It's not access I'm making, though.
No.
I'm talking about weaponization of the Beach Control Act, which is different from access. You're asking me to give you an example.
Well, we can't resolve that issue here, but I certainly would like to hear from you more if that is your area of expertise, because I just want it to be clear that I believe that the beaches should be accessed by our people.
I know you believe that. You've been saying this from day one. I've been watching you on the town hall.
I believe that whatever legal arrangements that we put in place or need to be changed must be done that will balance the rights of all Jamaicans, because we have different sectors and different interests. The economic interest.
All Jamaicans.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And that is what we're in the process of doing. So at least be excited with me that we are in the, no, I don't mean you personally. I mean our listeners or people. Mm-hmm. I know we want it and we want it at once, but we have to go through a process of understanding why is this issue so near and dear to the hearts of the people. We're talking about lack of education, insufficient education. Let us not assume that everything we know is known by anyone else. If I were to make that assumption as a legally trained person, I would be unfit to lead this process.
And that is why we have to listen to each other.
Absolutely.
It's very important. And will you please pay some attention to what's happening as we speak in terms of how the Beach Control Act is being used, right? I think that even while we're talking about constitutional reform, talking about rights and so on, we have to, it's almost disingenuous to have all of this happening. And then you feel like in the background, there's a haste to do something before something happens. Well, that's what it feels like.
Well, let us put this in context. Tourism is a major income earner
until
in the
COVID
economy.
Or another pandemic.
Kabu.
Yes, Marlene.
We have to cultivate the discipline to not conflate everything.
No. What do you mean by conflating everything?
No, hear me now.
I said, listen. Tourism is a very fickle industry.
You're saying no to me even when we are in agreement.
And you have also said to me that I'm conflating everything.
When I said we, I'm speaking societally. Don't limit it to the two of us here. It's the royal we.
There you go. Right.
It's a royal we. Because we have so many grievances in the society. So many things left unresolved.
I cannot manage you on the grievances, no.
But it's true.
Let us not call concerns grievances.
But it is a grievance.
Because grievance carries a negative connotation. But it carries a negative connotation. It is a concern for our loyalty to Jamaica, for our need for human rights, basic human rights, which is not necessarily a grievance. It's a concern.
Hold on. Again, this is how communication is going to bridge the gap. My use of the word grievance is not a negative word. It's really saying that there are issues to be resolved. There are disputes that have not been resolved. Go back and look on the root cause of the word grievance. It's
the connotation I'm talking about, because words change over time. And in Jamaica, grievance have a negative connotation.
But people grieve. But when them tell us that me grieve about this and me grieve about that. People grieve about the beaches. Them grieve about a number of things. How you going to tell me say, I know something we must talk about?
No, I didn't say don't talk about it.
That's the culture. Man grieve about everything.
Let's go back to the phone line because this is
that's the culture I'm talking about. Them grieve about things.
All right, there you go. So I'm understanding that when you say grievance, from Westmoreland, my St. Mary understanding of grievance is that it has a negative connotation. We from country see it away. Let me take another.
When man say them grieve?
When you grieve, this is serious business. When you grieve,
Exactly.
yeah, but that's why I'm saying it has a negative connotation. Because man, we grab something when him grieve. Let us.
But that's it. They must grab things.
That's why I said to you that it's not a grievance. It is a concern. And one of the things we do is listen to each other.
There you go.
So I'm happy that we're having a conversation, because this in particular, the Beach Control Act, when you go back, Minister, just pay some attention to this.
It's
This is
deep
what I'm
distress we're talking about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Deep distress.
You
When I
Google
talk
it?
I always
Go
go
to
the
Meta
root of
AI
words.
and see if it tell you the same thing, because you have to
Always.
ask Grok or somebody what you mean by
No.
deep distress. But I'm joking there.
It's what I'm talking about when I say the grievance is that people deep down, the issues have been left unresolved, and you're just piling on top of piling and piling and piling.
Right.
Right? We have to unpack.
This is why I say
have to
listen to.
unpack.
This is what we're doing. That's why I say
Yes.
listen to each other,
Yes.
and I'm taking away from you. You're taking away from me. So when I go back on another program, I will have foundational information coming straight from the minister, and you'll have information coming from our listeners plus myself.
The next time I come back, we have to structure the discussion a little differently. My suggestion.
Yes, you were late,
beforehand.
that's why.
Right?
That's
You
why.
coming back on that? I could
No,
have
I
not
mean-
come at all, you know. You see that?
Let's
No
go
win.
to-
No
No, but
win.
you're right. We structured the discussion a little bit differently when you get back.
Sick self to come. Are you
My
going to
apologies.
knock me about it?
My apologies. I apologize. Let me go back to the phone lines. Hello, caller. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Greetings.
Greetings.
Yes. Go ahead with your question for.
Okay, yes. Rahul from the African Liberation Movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a referendum at this time provides a quintessential and pivotal platform for genuine changes to the Constitution, given the historical context of its genesis from colonizer to colonized, and even the opportunity to generate a bona fide Jamaican constitution de novo. Is there a risk or threat of not reaching bipartisan consensus that may be inadvertently sacrificed on the altar of political ego over fear of lingering vestiges of monarchy, for example, ceremonial president, as well as to whom the credit of transformation is adjudicated in the annals of political history? Also, the communication gap and difficulty of communication, as alluded to by the minister, is real, and it is really due to the colossal failure, in my opinion, or could I ask her if she's in agreement, of the education system over the decades. That is one of exclusion of African culture, of things like civics and history from the curriculum.
Okay. Education, the system itself.
The whole education system has to be overhauled. I think access to different cultures is just now being open to us in a real way. And there is no doubt that we have lost a lot. And so the work before us is a lot, and we have to get on with it. Again, I am about process and outcome. I really am about process and outcome. And if listeners take nothing away from my being on air with you this morning, is I would invite them to just think about the importance of process in order to get to an outcome. And what you learn in the process, how you mature and how you grow, and how your understanding expands. Process to get to outcome. It's like a journey to a destination. And the journey itself sometimes is even more important than the destination. So we have the work cut out for us. The referendum has to be held in order for us to achieve the change. So all of my African brothers and sisters and all of the other ethnic groups just understand this, that the change to have a Jamaican head of state can only take place with a law being passed by the parliament and then the people approving it. If we just continue to talk and talk about it, important as the talk is, we're going to be left with the same form of government that we
What
have.
is a referendum?
So it's really similar to a vote. I've never experienced one. We have never had one in independent Jamaica. The last time one was held was whether Jamaica should become independent or remain in West Indies Federation. So what will go before the people is a vote to approve the changes which will bring the new form of government. The bill, because the Constitution tells you what will have to be approved by the people. So you're not going to be voting as you would normally for a member of parliament or a political party. You're voting for a national outcome.
Okay. So is it going to be a situation where this is tied to, do you foresee this happening, the national election, where it becomes a question on the ballot, or it's going to be a separate thing? All right, I know you're having a cough.
The advice of the experts is that it not be done at the time of the national election, and in any event, what remains to be done, the time would not allow for it to be done. So we don't want to conflate it, because it's not meant to be a partisan political process, even though we know the voting people will take their cue from the political leaders that they support, because it's not any member of the public that will vote. It's those who vote for the members of parliament.
Meaning?
Those who are registered to vote.
Registered to vote.
Yes.
So if you're not registered to
participate.
So, and this is also another campaign that I think that is critical, which is, and I know there's a caller hold, I'm going to go shortly, but let me come back to that. Let me go to the caller, because it is critical in all of this for us to register to vote. Those who never register, you have to register to vote now. Let me go back to the call. Hello, caller.
Hi, good morning, Kheru. Good morning, Minister Malaki.
Good morning.
Minister, thank you for still fighting to come in despite how you feel. How many questions am I allowed to ask? This is Sandri. I'm Sandri.
Hey, Son. Well, you see the time. We're almost out of time.
All right.
But
let me just choose two or so.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. First of all, if the Constitution, the road to Republic under a Constitution to a company that is supposed to be by Jamaicans for.
Did we lose your Sandri? Can we? I think we should be able to get her back on the line. I know she called in, but we should be able to get her if we've lost her there. She lectures in the Department of History at the University of the West Indies. Sandri. Sonia, that was your name that just called just now from the Reparations Commission Center. So, right, registering to vote, this is critical, isn't it? If you are going to participate in the process, there is that element.
Yes, the people who will vote to approve the changes are those who are registered to vote. So again, I want to encourage all Jamaicans, once you have achieved voting age of 18, that you register to vote, get on the voters list, enumerate to participate in the process.
Do we understand how critical this is, though? Because I do know that so many Jamaicans have not registered. You're not registered to vote. You don't have no voter's ID, you don't register. And if your name on the list, it drop off long time. So here is the thing. We have to register to vote on this. And as I said earlier, this is too critical to pass upon. It is important. This is a very significant moment in our history. This is on us, a fluid time. Right now, there's a whole lot of things I do not care about, I do not agree that we should hold this up because of a CCJ. There are many questions to be answered about the Privy Council and the CCJ. I do not, I have nothing to do with the British monarchy. And so you know where I stand on that. But I honestly believe that this is too critical for us to even try to hold this up. To me, if the vote was tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to vote because I don't register. So I'll go and register Monday. All right, let me go back to the phone lines. And I'm carrying everybody with me, by the way. Let us go register. Remember when we had Follow Me Go Library? This is now Follow Me Go Register to vote, because we have to vote on this. Let me take a quick call. Hello?
Yes, I'm here, Kheru.
Okay, go ahead, yes. Sandri. Yes.
All right. So I was saying, if the Constitution is going to be by Jamaicans for Jamaicans, why is Richard Albert a member of the CRC? Who is he and why is he a part of the CRC?
Who is Richard Albert?
Professor Albert is a constitutional constitutional law professor. We need expert advice on a number of things, like anything else. He's also, he has Jamaican roots. There aren't many constitutional experts with connection to the region. And Professor Albert's scholarship is well recognized. You can look up his work. I mean, there were some issues around it. All members of the committee have agreed that he has made a good contribution to the work. And we are grateful. You know, Jamaicans are called upon to serve abroad. We don't want to hear that our people get scoffed at because they may not be identified with a nationality. Many Jamaicans are called upon to assist processes in other Caribbean islands, in other places. And we stand proud and tall when we see that our expertise is being called upon and is making a contribution. So we have Dr. Lloyd Barnett as our local expert, and we wanted someone who can bring a comparative eye to the work. And Professor Albert has made a really good contribution.
Why did you ask Sondre? Because I don't know who that person is. Why did you ask?
Because there were concerns that one, he was not Jamaican, and that two, as minister might be aware, there were some concerns being expressed that he might be coming in with other agendas.
Well, he didn't
to keep it very different.
He didn't come in with any agenda.
Well, I'm not saying that in a minister. I'm saying what the people are saying in the public,
right. But you know, again, we have to be willing to talk about things. Some people may be against one agenda and others are for it. So we have to get to the stage where we can have open conversations about the issues that we have concern about and respectful conversation. I view our differences as a strength and not a weakness. It's just that many times we become very disrespectful when we speak of our differences, as human beings. If we're not all African, then something wrong with us. If we're not all Indian, something wrong with us. If we're not all rich, and we continue to pit groups against each other to our detriment as a nation.
All right. Did you say you have? Is that enough for you, Sondre? Do you have another question quickly?
I do have another question. We're going over into Bigay's time, so I don't want to prolong this part of the conversation.
Mr. Bigay, are you in? I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Sondre. Yes.
Right. So until Minister Mesa is available for another opportunity, I want to ask, since you mentioned phases, I'm concerned about infrastructural development. Will this constitution give us an opportunity to hold members of the government accountable for infrastructural development? For example, we had the case of the roads the other day. The Prime Minister was openly saying that he purchased tires for somebody who had damaged their tires on the roads, but many of us are losing front ends and so on. And we could not call him for him to buy back anything. So I'm asking, will the Constitution allow us to hold you accountable? And if holding you accountable means that we are going to protest, can we do that without asking for your permission to protest?
You know, I am big on accountability. The Constitution, government, you're allowed to go a little time over into the next segment.
Are we? Can somebody tell me, especially Mr. Bigay, if we are allowed to go over for a minute or two? Yes,
so, I am a firm believer that the place to correct a fault, you spot it and you correct it where it occurs. I joke all the time that people go to the tax office and they have a bad experience with the clerk who's attending to them. And they call on the Minister of Finance and they call on the Prime Minister. When it's not the Finance Minister nor the Prime Minister who's performing the particular duty. So government is administered. It's administered by officials who have a formal role and carry out formal functions. If you're applying for a position in government, it actually has a name, you know. It's not just people, so it's just not anybody. And I think this is what has to be understood. Government is not a one-man show. Government does not only comprise the political directorate, important as that part of government is. Government is broken down into ministries, departments, and agency, and work is assigned across subject matters with the departments and agencies, and the laws that relate to them follow. So you have Ministry of Education, you have a Ministry of Finance, you have Ministry of Health. Right now you have Ministry of dealing with the laws. All right. So our tendency to just move straight to some other place has caused
But you know
us
the
a
reason for
problem.
that, though. It
But
is.
I am all for greater accountability. Is Sanjay, Sandra, if there is the only reason that I am in government, and believe me, is because of my own passion for efficiency in government. And I can't, someday soon, I'm going to share with the Jamaicans what I have been seeing and what has contributed to the breakdown that we have.
I'll invite you back, and I really do hope that.
So yes, it's all about accountability. But you know, there is an engineering standard. Let me tell you something. The years when the country was suffering negative growth, economic mismanagement, the engineering standards were revised down. And we wonder how and why it has set in now. Culture takes time to form and take root. And so many things took root in those years of economic decline. I verily believe, that some of our complex processes that we have now were designed simply because there was no money available. So it frustrates people to go through it. You raise hope, all these ceremonial things that cause people not to understand the importance of ceremony. You break ground for something that you have no budget allocated for. Those are the things.
I'll invite you back, Minister.
Grieve me.
Yeah.
And grieve many other Jamaicans. So we're going to have an honest talk.
Yeah. About structural violence.
About how we have been.
Because that's basically what it is at the end of the day. Minister, we have the wrap-up signal. We do have to go over into the next program. But just quickly, it's been on the news, and we heard it in the last press conference. Just take a minute for me and say, are you planning to move away from your constituency? Because we heard that the constituency is being reviewed for the next election. Are you planning to move away? Are you planning to step away?
Good morning to my St. James West Central constituencies who are tuned in. I am the sitting member of Parliament for St. James West Central. There is no vacancy in the seat, and I will be returned as the next member of Parliament.
This is how we're saying goodbye for today. Thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and thank you so much, Minister. Thank you to the team, to Mr. Wisdom, to Peter Broadbent, to my producer, Shamara Preston, to the general team, to our program director, Clover, to our managing director, Debbie Ann Dewar, to our sales and marketing manager, Nicholas Evans. They all ensured that this happened today. Thank you so much, Shane Unstoppable. Mr. Biggie, are you there, sir? I'm not seeing you. I'm not hearing you. Are you there? No? Do we know if Mr. Biggie is in? All right. It means that our talk for today is not going to happen. But we're making way now for
Cabo, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Do you have a question for the minister, sir? Or do you want to just say hello?
No, I'm just saying hello. Good morning to you, Minister.
When you come on, can you play Zion Train is coming our way?
I most definitely will. In fact, let me try and see if I can close out with that.
Let me just greet all the listeners. Thank you for the opportunity to share. But we're gonna have to structure the conversation a little differently.
How do you want me to structure the conversation next time?
Well, one, let's try. There's so much information to convey about the process, and I think people are listening on. So
you want to spend some more time on the process?
Yes.
And we invite you back for that.
So we can't be dealing with all of the other many important issues.
Yes.
Because it's going to not allow for the education.
Because that was the plan.
Yes. But the education to happen. I know it's the excitement.
Yeah. We're very happy to have you. So many things to say. And we really had to get in some of them. So next time when you come in, we'll go through the process and we'll invite you back in short order because I think that is important.
But Irie FM is Irie,
I know.
I like the station.
Yeah, there you go. Say that again so we can use it as a jingle.
Irie FM, Irie man. Love the station.
No, you're going to have to say Marlene Malahuford. Say that. Minister Marlene Malaho Ford. Hi. No, say hi. I'm Minister Marlene Malaho Ford, and then go ahead.
No, I'm not my
It's
title.
a jingle.
I'm not my title.
All right.
I am Marlene Malaho Ford, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Member of Parliament for St. James West Central. Irie FM is just Irie. Keep listening. Yeah, man.
Please to cut that and pull that. Big, you hear that?